included in the $500. The pictures of the poses really freaked me out. I couldn't handle it, so I politely told him that I would not be taking up his offer. He asked if I could do him one last favor. I asked what the favor was. Could you oppress me on your private stories on social media and then send me proof? Or send me what people say? I asked why. He said that while he felt bad when he saw mean comments about him, he also kind of enjoyed it and got a rush from reading those messages. This would stay between us, the fact that I asked you to do it, he assured me. That was the least of my worries. I declined to do this and told him to have a good summer. Throughout our exchange, over the course of about a week, he asked me not to spread his desires over 20 times, and I constantly had to reply with, okay. I am wondering now if his last request to oppress him was reverse psychology, maybe knowing that girls wouldn't want to satisfy his perversions by saying that a press turned him on, he would get girls to avoid doing so. He is quite the genius apart from the fetish, so I wouldn't be surprised. Or if his initial request to not spread this was the reverse psychology. I have heard he was willing to pay extra if girls did him a favor. When asked what the favor was, private photo in mind, he told them he would like to be tickled. I wonder now how many of the Insta/Snapchat story posts about him were paid for by the man himself. He's blocked by the majority of girls in the class, shunned by almost all the guys, and will be going to college in the fall with a new batch of girls to prey on. If you have a fetish of any kind, save it for yourself and your potentially willing future partner, instead of turning all your classmates against you and losing all your friends by irritating girls for foot pics. And go to therapy or something.
My name is Michelle, and this is my first time out at the club. My best friends Pat and Mary had forced me to be out with them. I tried my possible best to prevent them from letting me go, but this time they both got me. As soon as I got there, I sat with the bartender and ordered for a non-alcoholic drink, while Pat and Mary were out on the dance floor dancing with some guys they didn't know. I thought to myself, that could never be me. I was the shy and reserved one out of the three of us. This time the speakers were banging hard one could hardly hear. "Give me another drink," I said, and I stood. All I wanted was to go out for a walk and clear my head. As I made my way out, I bumped into this fierce-looking guy, and all my drink poured on him. "Are you blind?" he said out loud, threatening to slap me. I quickly adjusted my position before looking into his eyes and said, "Sorry." There was an instant connection between us. He was a handsome guy with his cute face and all. We both went in to clean ourselves up. We found an empty room and we went in alone. "Let's stay here, it's quiet." The chilly breeze stuck to our faces as we came to a halt. I held onto his hand, my beautiful beady eyes darting to and fro as we entered a room. He smiled at me as I made my way to help him unbutton his shirt. "You are beautiful, you know," he whispered as he caressed my pitiful face. My heart rate suddenly increased. I didn't want to come here, and here I was with a total stranger alone with the room to ourselves. He started kissing me gently and slowly, making sure his hands cupped my face as he continued. I thought again to myself, am I really going to do this? I don't even know his name. "Over here," he said, pointing to the bed, his fingers grasping mine tightly as we moved. He threw his hands around me as our mouths made love. Gentle and soft kisses at first, setting the rhythm for the passionate moments that came after. He kissed me deeper, our tender hands exploring each other as my moans filled the room. We had our hands locked together as we laid on a pile of clothes. I shouldn't be doing this, I thought to myself. In one fluid motion, I pushed him away and I jumped out of the bed. "I'm sorry," I managed to say. I felt embarrassed, not just for myself, but also for the guy with me. "No problem, we should get some drinks," he said, and picked a shirt from the bed. We went back to the club and the music was even louder. Immediately, he ordered a beer for himself, and me, not wanting to impress him, ordered for a red alcoholic wine. He held my hands and we danced all the night, forgetting what had transpired between us. My best friends Pat and Mary just watched me from afar, and some minutes after, Pat walked up to me and whispered in my ear, I see you are enjoying yourself." I didn't seem to bother as the wine was taking its toll on me. I was enjoying myself and I was dancing harder than before. I took more drinks and couldn't control myself any longer. I felt tipsy, and at the same time I could hear my stomach rumbling. I held on tight to my stomach and in an instant I threw up. All the contents of the vomit came flying on my new guy, and this time it wasn't funny. Pat and Mary quickly rushed to the scene and hurried me out. I never felt so embarrassed in my entire life. What's your story? True Tales wants to hear it. If you also have any such moment, you can share it in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you liked my story. Subscribe to this channel to watch more such videos, and press the bell icon for more updates. Everyone faces a bad day in their life, and so I too. Hi, this is John, and this is the story of when I was in school. My exams were on and I was in the classroom solving question paper. A single bead of sweat rolled down the middle of my forehead and made its lonely journey along the bridge of my nose, finally settling at the tip. It hung there precariously for what seemed a lifetime before dropping downward. It landed squarely on the question paper, nestling between the number 25 and the beginning of the actual question. I was completely oblivious of it or the other beads of sweat that were pouring copiously from my head. Some even stung my eyes painfully, but I made no attempt to wipe them away, let alone close my eyes. The room was not particularly hot, nor was I running a fever, though I'd wished I'd been sick on this particular day. It would have given me a good excuse not to take the test. Maybe I should feign illness, I thought. God knows I looked the part. Again, I quickly dismissed the idea. It would never work because I had used that excuse too many a time. Besides, more than half the scheduled time for the exam had elapsed, and it would be pointless at this point. I looked down again at my empty answer sheet, and the severity of the present situation really sunk in. My sweat poured down my head as a mild panic attack set in. I silently cursed myself for not studying the previous night. The football game in the field outside my house was way too enticing, and I had bowed to peer pressure like a cheap umbrella in a storm. In retrospect, studying last night would have had little effect on the outcome today. It was not like this was a pop quiz or a midterm exam that sprung on me and had not time to read. I had a full 8 years to prepare for this exam. Everyone knew that the whole point of a primary school education was to pass this exam and get into a good secondary school. It had been drummed into all and sundry from the get-go that this was a make or break 3 days. In one fluid motion, I looked around the room, making my desperation with a casual yawn and stretch. My closest colleagues were at least a meter away in either direction. None of my fellow examinees seemed troubled. They all had their eyes fixed squarely on their question papers, concentrating like their lives literally depended on it, before turning their attention to the answer sheet and shading away. I had never felt more alone in my whole life. A break in this almost choreographed dance of read then write caught my eye. I noticed that Vera, the girl to my immediate left, was not reading her question paper. Instead, she was surreptitiously lifting her school dress and reading off her thigh. I should have been outraged, but instead I myself for not thinking of that. I looked up at her totally impressed, then down at my shorts, and mentally pictured myself writing down information I would have needed in the exam room. Again, I cursed myself almost audibly this time. On the other hand, I could not imagine what would happen if I was caught cheating. With the last bit of courage in me, I called out to Paul, who sat some seats away from me. Since the commencement of the exams, he had his face buried in his question papers as he seemed to answer with extreme ease. I winked at him and he got the sign. Slowly, he tore a small part of his paper and hurriedly scribbled some answers on it. I watched him as he worked. The mere thought terrified me to the point of causing my saliva to taste like sawdust in my mouth. I could see it now in my mind. The disapproving look from my teachers, the disappointment from my parents, the school headmaster being forced to call the police, the dark interrogation room, and finally breaking down and selling Paul out as his source. The thought snapped me back to reality. I can't go through this. I folded the paper to a small square and placed it on my slipper. I looked around just to be sure I wasn't watched before sliding it down to me. I could feel my heart rate increase with fear rushing through my body. I was relieved as I picked the paper and opened to see the precious answers I was racking my head for. Just as I was about to drop the slipper and slide it back, I heard the booming voice of the chief invigilator. "John, what do you have in your hand there?" I almost peed in my pants as I held the paper in my hand. "Come outside," the chief invigilator shouted again. With shame and disgrace written over me, I stood in front of my classmates. The class became a bit noisy as the remaining students began murmuring. The invigilators called my parents and invited them over, and I just stood watching, waiting for the dreaded day to end. What's your story? True Tales wants to hear it. If you also have any such moment, you can share it in the comments section below. Hit the like button if you liked my story, subscribe to this channel to watch more such videos, and press the bell icon for more updates.
Hi everyone, my name is Jane, and I just had my first kiss. It felt odd and awkward with the mere thought of it making me laugh every single time. It wasn't as beautiful as I thought my first kiss would be, but it wasn't bad either. Paul was his name, and he was easily the boy of any teenage girl's dreams. He was 6'4" tall. His chin was more rigid and prominent than most of the boys'. One could see how his chest muscles were built with his shirt fitting well on him. With just that, I already knew how his abs were going to be. The rise and fall of his bicep muscles and tricep muscles were immaculate as he clung onto his backpack that hung loosely at his back. He recently just transferred to our school and everyone was talking about him, even some of the guys. In less than a week, he frolicked with the so-called big boys of the class. "I'm definitely going to marry him," I smiled to myself as I glanced at him from the hallway. I had an immediate crush on him, and all I ever wanted was him, but I wasn't bold enough to walk up to him. As much as I liked him, I didn't want to feel rejected. I was satisfied with admiring him from afar, and all I could do was hope he noticed me. Have I talked about his voice? Oh, his voice was heavenly. "How are you?" I heard him speak to Miss Merson. There was something about him I couldn't explain. It felt as if he was a product of an artistic masterpiece. I prayed for him to be put in my classroom, and guess what? Yes, you guessed right. He was put in my class. Everything is working out fine, I thought again to myself. If I couldn't talk to him, at least I'd get to look at him all day, and that was just enough for me. He was a few seats away from me, and all I did was smile widely as I stared at him. He wasn't looking at me, and I had all the freedom to stare as much as I want. I had created several scenarios of us being together, and I smiled harder. Suddenly, he looked back at me, and I was in shock and turned my face away. "Did he catch me?" I mumbled under my breath. Slowly, I turned my head as I returned it back to its original position, and there he was, with his eyes looking directly at me. He smiled, and I could swear I caught him winking at me. Shyly, I managed to smile, but all I did was blush with my fluffy fat cheeks turning red. I felt embarrassed. I buried my head in my books and prayed for the class to end. I couldn't bear to look at him again and risk him catching me the second time. I tried my very best, but I just had to look at that handsome face. After classes, I hurried out of the room in a bid to leave as quickly as possible. I walked as fast as I could until I was stopped in my steps. I had rammed into someone as I walked, and all of my books came falling. Sorry, I said as I bent to pack my books. I carried my head up, and this time, I found a big smile staring at me. I didn't know what to do, how to react, or even what to say. He also bent down and helped me pack my books, and then I saw his right hand resting on mine. I pretended not to see it until he held both of my hands, looked at me straight in the eyes, and brought his lips to kiss mine. It felt like a dream, and all I did was close my eyes and allow it to flow. "My name is Paul," he said as he made his way out. I was still on my knees as I looked at him walk out. I bit my lower lip as I savored the moment that just passed. What's your story? True Tales wants to hear it. If you also have any such moment, you can share it in the comments section below. Hit the like button if you liked my story. Subscribe to this channel to watch more such videos, and press the bell icon for more updates.
Hey there, my name is Nancy. Well, most people out there would have kissed someone and their partner would have still supported them. However, in my own case, it's a different story than you all. There was a boy named Michael, and everyone in the high school felt delighted to see him anytime. And I also felt the same thing. On that day, it was his birthday, and all the girls from the high school wished him a happy birthday. I wished him, though. He had thrown his birthday party that night and had invited all the guys and girls of high school. That same day, I was searching for a book in the library, and he came over to me and asked if I had any plans for that night. I said no, without hesitation, and he asked if I could join his birthday party. At that moment, I was feeling on top of the world that the most adorable guy asked me to join his birthday party. But without showing my emotions to him, I just said, "Yes, sure, that sounds good." After school that day, I literally ran all the way home to find the best outfit to wear for that special night. I removed all my clothes from my wardrobe, took an hour to decide what attire to wear. Finally, I wore a sexy black dress and rushed to the party. As I reached the destination, I found the party to be well organized with all my high school classmates dancing on the dance floor. Few were partying on the bar, but I was yet to see Michael anywhere. So I went to the bar, got a glass of mojito, and settled down on the couch beside the bar. I was just chilling out when Michael came up to me and asked for help. He had cut his thumb and wanted help in finding first aid box. I felt maybe he wants to spend time with me because he was taking me away from the party. I was highly strung and also excited. With this feeling, I went along with my crush. We reached his room and started searching for first aid box everywhere. We searched in the wardrobe, a small cabinet, a side table, drawer, etc., but could not find it. Lost in the thought of a first aid box, we both were walking back from the opposite direction and collide with each other. We both fell onto the floor and started laughing. We started talking to each other and got to know each other better. We were having a lot of fun, and I was getting infatuated on him more than before. I felt that even he had also started liking me. I pondered on the thought that we actually came here in search of the first aid box, and then we were sitting and talking for so long. I was getting loving vibes from Michael, and suddenly he started leaning toward me as if leaning in for a kiss. Without giving it a thought, I just grabbed him and kissed him on the lips. I was actually kissing my crush for real, and it was amazing. And suddenly, Michael pushed me away and said, "Hey, have you lost?" I was so embarrassed and confused. I told him, stammering, well, you leaned in for a kiss, right? Oh, no, that was a wrong assumption. He pointed behind me to reveal that the first aid box was lying under the chair behind me. He was reaching for the first aid box. It was so awkward and embarrassing for me. My ears were waiting to hear that he enjoyed it, but there was just silence. I didn't know what to do, so I ran out of the party, out of the house, and started whining. It had gone from so stupendous to such an unsuccessful love story. If you also have such experiences in the past, you can share it in the comments section below. Hit the like button if you liked my story, and subscribe to this channel to watch more of such videos.
I'm Lily. And when I was 18, a rich guy tried buying my love. I've always been a beautiful girl with long curly hair that is the perfect shade of reddish brown. Additionally, a curvy body and a pearly white smile. Even though I consider myself attractive, I never knew I would get this kind of attention from a man. I had no idea the stranger I was about to meet would shower me with attention and love. I went to the grocery store one day after work. I had changed out of my corporate formal wear into something more casual, jeans that hugged my hips, and a t-shirt that molded around my bosom just right. Once I picked a few items, I realized there was a man that had been following me around the store for quite some time. He wasn't conventionally attractive, but he had certain qualities one would adore, such as broad shoulders, very tall with tan skin, and dark brown eyes. I began making my way to the register, and once it was my turn to pay, I heard a voice from behind me go, "I've got that." He smiled gently at me as he proceeded to insert his platinum card into the machine. I've never seen a card like that before. At the bottom, it said, "Honored member." I began to ponder why he was paying for my groceries. "You didn't have to do that," I muttered to him, trying to stay calm because now I was about to start loading my groceries into the trunk of my old and little car. He had parked right next to me in his Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon. I stood there gobsmacked as my mouth hung open in awe and wonder at it. Who was this mystery man? I decided to ask him precisely. "Who are you and why did you pay for my groceries?" in a very snappy tone. He looked at me desperately, as if I never noticed him before he put the card into the machine 5 minutes prior. He relented, admitting, "I've been watching you for weeks now. Your pattern, where you work, where you live, everything. I know it sounds crazy, but I've fallen for you by just being an onlooker, and I want to give you the life I know a girl like you deserves. If you give me a chance, let me buy your love. Dinner on Friday can be a start." He looked at me tenderly and more confident now. What did I have to lose? I contemplated. Dinner with a wealthy man, even though he seemed a bit obsessive. I caved. Sure, why not? Friday sounds like a plan. What time and where? I asked now, trying to take reign of the situation. "I'll handle all of that, don't you worry. Just look pretty by 8 p.m. he said as he strutted to the other side of the G-Wagon to hop in. "Wait, I never even got your name," I partly yelled. In the G-Wagon that revved up, he rolled down the windows with sunglasses on at night. Nonetheless, he lowered them a little, just enough to gaze at me. "I'm the CEO of the firm in which you work for." Now I knew why he had that information about me. But I didn't let it stop me from allowing his advances. The date went wonderfully, and he continues to shower me with the love and attention I always wanted from a man. Now, 4 years later, we are happily married and our love story will continue, and we still shop at that same little grocery store together every weekend. What's your story? True Tales wants to hear it. If you also have any such moment, you can share it in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you liked my story. Subscribe to this channel to watch more such videos and press the bell icon for more updates.
Hi, my name is Flora. I'm 22 years old. The story I will be telling you today is about my life and its struggles. It all started in middle school, when I was an outcast. I always wore a hat, baggy clothes, and shoes with no name brand. I would always be teased, and because of that, I would always speed walk from class to class. Then I was dubbed the weirdo who walks fast. My mum wasn't any nicer. Anything that I would do, she would find something to say about it. My parents are super conservative. Whenever I would do something that she would not approve of, She would quote a Bible scripture to me. When I asked to hang out with my friend, she would say, "Bad association spoils useful habits. Don't you read the Bible?" When I wouldn't get good grades, she would call me worthless and say I would not amount to anything. Whenever I would watch TV, she called it demonic. I ate food to comfort myself and gained some weight. That's when she started to call me pregnant. The only kind person in my life was this bus driver. When I would take the bus for home from school, I would see the same bus driver. He was very kind to me. He would tell me that I am a smart girl. I opened up to him and told him about my mom and her ways. He encouraged me to be a better person and to still respect my mom. Fast forward to high school. I was a sophomore in high school. The teasing got worse once a girl threw water in my face. Another time a girl smashed my head against the wall. So I hid in the school basement to eat my lunch. That's when I had the last straw. I was eating my lunch when upperclassmen guys came into the basement too. They surrounded me. I said, "May I help you?" The guy said yeah and grabbed me. There was another guy recording everything. I screamed, I kicked him, then slapped the guy with the phone and he ran away. I never returned that school again. After a few years, I learned how to do makeup to enhance my look. I also became a nurse assistant and got a job with an agency. Then one day I was taking the bus buying groceries for my mum, and guess who I saw? That bus driver. He kept staring at me. He was so happy to see me. He asked me on a date. I said sure. We went to the movies, got lunch, and hung out. Life was actually going well until my dad got sick. He lost his mind and needed someone to help him and take care of him. My mom quit her job to help him, so I started to contribute to the house expenses. My sister took it hard and stopped attending middle school. She was 16 at the time and I was 19. Then one day my mom said, "It's time for you to get out. You are a leech and I can't afford for you to stay here. You have until the end of this week." My sister even added her 2 cents, and she called me a dirty girl. My sister and I were really close as children, but once she became a teen, hell broke loose. I left and I called the bus driver and told him. He said I can live with him and his sons, but first he has to ask his wife. Hold up, you have a wife? You didn't tell me. Then I got mad all over again. He said yes, but I can live there by saying I am one of the son's girlfriend. I didn't have much of a choice. I packed my stuff at home and left. When I got to his place, his son answered the door. He was already told the situation. I asked him how old he was. He said 19. Oh my God, how old is the bus driver? I thought. He introduced me to his twin brother and his stepmom, the bus driver's wife. She was beautiful. So I lived with them. The bus driver's son turned out to be a little freak. He kept trying to whip out his little manhood. Ugh, I have to move. I found a college that I could live in, but they needed my parents' info and signature. So I went to my mom, or should I say that lady, and asked for her signature. She said no and slammed the door in my face. I went to the library and Googled free places to live and discovered Job Corps. I signed up and within 2 weeks I left the bus driver's house, and that's when my life changed forever. I moved to Job Corps and they had all girls and all boys dorms, which was pretty cool. I took classes in the medical field there and made some friends. My roommate became my BFF. Her name was Anastasia and my other friend Denise. They were both in the medical field too. Then I met Eric. He is 25. He had this huge crush on me. I was a little hesitant to talk to guys again, but Eric won me over. He would hold my hand, buy me cute jewelry, and help me with some assignments that I didn't quite understand. By the way, you should know that Eric is a genius. The students would call him doctor. Even our instructors would ask him to teach the class and do the lesson plan. While Eric and I were courting, the bus driver kept calling my phone relentlessly. He kept asking stuff like, "Who is Eric?" I asked him, "How does he know about Eric?" He said, "I saw on Facebook that you two are a couple." He screamed. I asked, "Why does he care so bad?" He said, "I actually love you." I said, "Sure you do." He said, "Well, I want to be with you." I asked him about his wife. He said they were getting a divorce and wanted to start over with me. I asked him, "Then why did you hook me up with your son then?" He said, "Because it would be an excuse to have me around." I rolled my eyes. He begged me to talk to him and meet with him on a weekend. I agreed. Later my phone rang, and it was that woman, aka my mom. Up to now, I had been living at Job Corps for 5 months. Mom started talking with asking how I was doing and whatnot, and then she said how she missed me, and I said, "Oh, thanks," then hung up. That weekend, I hung out with the bus driver on the bus. He was at work. He asked me to move in with him again. I told him no again. Then one woman got on the bus at the next stop. The bus driver looked frightened. He quickly told me to sit down, but it was too late. This crazed woman attempted to attack me and screamed, "Get away from my baby's father!" "Wait, do you have another baby?" I asked him. The crazed woman answered, "Yes, she is too, thanks." I got off the bus, blocked the bus driver. I went over to my friend Denise's house and spent time with her and her husband. We got some food and I spent the night with them. Not like in the way you're thinking. In the morning, my mom called me to come over and see my sick father. I agreed. I came over and said hello to my father. He looked so sick, like he aged 39 years. I did bring some things over for him and gave my mom some money for him. Mom asked where I had been living. I told her with Denise and her husband. Then Mom screamed, "You're having threesomes! Tell the devil to get behind you!" She ran to get her Bible, and I ran out of the house and didn't return. Now I am in a happy relationship with Eric. He has asked me my ring size, so ask me luck. Thanks for listening to my story.
Hey there, I am Calvin. One day, we were spending another Monday night playing games. Truth or dare, my sister asked me. Dare, I shouted, ready for anything she could throw at me. She smirked mischievously before saying, "I dare you to pretend to be blind at the Christmas party." I grinned at her challenge. You're on. There was no way I was going to back down from this. This was going to be the greatest party of all time. The day the Christmas party came around, I was pretty nervous. I did not want to accidentally blow my cover, but my sister promised she would save me if anything happened. I grabbed a walking stick and put sunglasses on. Just like that, the plan was in action. I started off sitting in the corner. People would come up and tap me before introducing themselves and asking if I needed anything. I told them to not mind me and that I was fine. After the party really got going, people really started to get carefree. Apparently, my corner was dubbed the kissing corner or something, because nearly every couple came over to make out at some point in time. I noticed that one guy kept coming back to this area to make out, every time he came with another woman. Thoroughly grossed out, I felt my way into the other room and asked around for the snacks. A guy led me over and offered to get me a plate. I agreed and watched as he mouthed to his friends, "Watch this." He handed me a hot pepper saying, "Here, this is a pepper. I will fill your plate now." Inwardly, I smiled at his unknown challenge. A hot pepper was nothing to me. I shoved the entire thing in my mouth and watched as they all laughed and waited for me to react. When I didn't start screaming from the heat, they frowned. "Thank you." I smiled at the wall before feeling around with my stick and moving away. The boys behind me lost it and clapped the fool on the back as they paid their respects. I staggered back to my corner. So far, this experience has been crazy. Boys are absolutely rude, even to cute, innocent blind girls. And they played way too much. I think every single girl at this party has made out with this single dude. I began looking for my sister. I didn't want to be at this party a moment longer than necessary. As I scurried around the house, my cane caught on a door. I paused and peeked inside before quickly turning around and running away. I found my sister and rushed us out of the house. I told her everything that happened, and we laughed so hard that we cried.
Hi, I'm Laura, and I'm in high school. Some people think of high school as a living hell. Some think of it more as the glory days. For me, it was both. I spent high school with the greatest people as friends, and we spent nearly every day hanging out and goofing off. We made so many inside jokes and would roast each other pretty hardcore. Nevertheless, we all completely trusted each other, and our friendship could not be broken. The only thing that made high school suck was Adam Spritz. We had been best friends in elementary school, but then he suddenly started to tease me. He would pull my hair and trip me in the hall. He called me names and teased me relentlessly. My friends would always help me out and protect me whenever he tried anything. but they couldn't be there all the time. What really took the cake out of the entire 4 years was the party for seniors. Everyone got totally wasted, and we all decided to play 7 Minutes in Heaven. This is not the smartest thing to do with hormonal teenagers that are absolutely wasted and no longer have a sense of morality. Everyone that was still standing gathered around, and the first person spun. Next thing I know, all of my friends are being picked off, one by one, and disappearing. The couples that went into the closet for the 7 minutes would immediately come out and head to any open room to continue where they left off. Even though most everyone had gone, there was still enough people to play and have fun with. In between the 7 minutes, we decided to play Truth or Dare. The questions and dares were completely ridiculous and just kept getting worse. Finally, I was called on. Dare me, I challenged them all. I dare you to have 7 minutes of heaven with Adam. I stared with a wide eye. To my surprise, he looked scared and a little hopeful. For the first time since elementary school, I really looked at the boy in front of me. He was very attractive. I decided that at a time like this, I can look past his stupid bullying. I grabbed onto him and dragged him into an empty room. As I closed the door, Adam began spluttering out that he's never played this game before and he does not know what to do. I wasn't listening. I stalked towards him like a lioness towards her prey. And then I attacked, crashing our lips together. He quickly reacted, kissing back and pulling me closer to him. The night was filled with gasping and panting as we lost ourselves to each other and the pleasure. When I opened my eyes the next morning, my head was already throbbing with an alcohol-induced migraine. I looked around for an Advil when my eyes landed on the boy wrapped around my waist, and what we did came crashing back into my memory. I tried to get up without waking him, but it was no use. His eyes opened and he sat up. When I tried to make a move to leave, he grabbed onto my wrist and started talking, explaining that he was sorry for teasing me and he liked me, but didn't know how to act out his feelings. I couldn't help myself from giving into those puppy dog eyes. You have a lot to make up to me, but I like you too.
My name is Gary, and I married a complete stranger. Having grandkids was always important, especially to my mom. I was her only child, and my dad had died when I was young. The older I got, the sadder she seemed to get, because not only was she alone, but she had no grandkids to bring joy into her life. I'm not an ugly guy, but work had always been my priority. As soon as I could, I was working a paper route, and then I got my first real job, right when I turned 16, at a fast food joint. Once I graduated high school, I went straight to working, and as I was supporting both her and myself, she was a hard-working single mom herself. But being the man of the house for her was important to me, and that took precedent over being a normal guy and dating around. Yes, I'd had my share of dates, but none that were serious for very long. When I was in my 30s, my mom started to tell me that I needed to bring a nice girl home. It was time for me to settle down, but I just never met anyone that I thought that way about. After I turned 35, my mom pulled me aside at Thanksgiving. "It's time, Gary," she told me. "Time for what, Mom?" "It's time you get married." I sighed. "Mom, I haven't met anyone, and I work all the time. How am I going to meet someone?" "Let me handle it," she told me. "Handle it? What do you mean?" "Some of my friends at church have daughters, and I bet I could get something figured out." "You mean you want to set me up?" "No, Gary," she said. "I want to get you a wife." Mom, how are you going to do that?" "Just let me handle it. You've taken care of me for all these years, so let me be your mom and take care of you." I shrugged and didn't think about it again. A month or so later, my mom called me. "I've got you someone." "Someone what?" "Gary, I've got you a bride. She's perfect." "You're kidding." "I'm not. What about a wedding for next week?" "Sure." She gave me a woman's phone number, but I didn't even bother calling it. It seemed too over the top. I showed up to my mom's church in a suit, just like she told me to, I was still expecting her to be playing a prank on me, but when I walked into the chapel, there was my mom with her pastor in the sanctuary and a few people in the pews that looked to be family members. "Mom?" I said. "Oh, Gary, it's time," she told me. "Stand right here." I stood next to the pastor, and my mom stood behind me, just like she was my best man. Then, the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen walked down the aisle. Before we met eyes, she looked sad and terrified, but when she met mine, she smiled, and it felt like my heart stopped. I turned back to my mom and said, "What's her name?" "Sarah," she told me. Sarah and I got married that day, which was the most unexpected, wonderful thing to ever happen to me. It turned out that she was in the exact same boat as me. She'd had poor luck dating and finally decided to let her mom take the reins. Even though our love story wasn't like others, it did become a love story. We grew to know and love each other and are still married today, over 20 years later. My mother got the grandkids she'd always wanted, too. I imagine I'd still be a single guy today and missed out on this wonderful life if I hadn't let my mom pick a complete stranger for me to marry.
Hi there, my name's Jason, and I'm about to tell you a story of how I ran away from my wedding and ruined my relationship with my family and my best friend in only one day. Let me give you some backstory first. When I was 5 years old, my family and I moved to a new town where I didn't know anyone. I didn't know any kids around my age, and school wouldn't start until the end of summer, which was still a month away. I was really lonely. A few days after we had finished unpacking, our neighbors came over to introduce themselves, and they brought over a big cake. They also had a daughter who was my age. Her name was Emily. We got along really well and became best friends. We played together throughout the whole summer, and even got put in the same class at school. We were best friends all through school and even in college. One day, after our classes had finished and we were both walking back to our respective dorm rooms, Emily was really quiet. She normally was always talking or making jokes, so this seemed really strange to me. She went over to a nearby bench and sat down. So I did too to make sure she was okay. She looked at me as I sat down and took a deep breath before she said that she had an important question to ask me. She said that this was going to be really hard for her, and it was something she had thought about for a long time. I waited patiently for what she was